Okay, good morning. So we are up to Reish Samach Ches Halacha Hey. We're talking about the tefillahs of Shabbos, and when a person makes mistakes in various tefillahs on Shabbos. Says the Mechaber in Sif Hey, Tov ispalasha chol b'Shabbos, v'lo hizkir shel Shabbos. So you come into shul Friday night, you're very exhausted from the week, you're not focused, and you daven a full weekday Shemona Esrei. And then you realize at the very end that you've davened on Friday night the wrong Shemona Esrei, weekday Shemona Esrei. So says the Mechaber, Im oker raglav chayzer l'rosh. If you have taken 3 steps back already, then you've got to go back and say a Shabbos Shemona Esrei. V'im lo oker raglav. If you have not yet taken 3 steps back, even though you're at the end of the Shemona Esrei, ein chayzer el l'shel Shabbos. You have to ein chayzer el shel Shabbos. V'shliach tzibur shel Shabbos b'shachar is ein el siman kuf chof vov. So let's see what that means. Says the Mechaber, lo akaraglav. Says Mishnah Berurah, lo akaraglav. Ein el b'siman kuf yud zayin seif hey of Mishnah Berurah Sham. So if you look at 14, he says shekosu sham she'em omay lekainet tzar v'yilarotzayin nechshav shesiyim es tefilosay. It doesn't actually mean necessarily that you've taken 3 steps back. It means that you've finished Elokainet Tzar and Yehilarotzain. That's considered finishing Shemona Esrei. So until that point, you say Shabbos Shemona Esrei again. You're still considered in the game. But if you've gone and you've said Elokainet Tzar and you said Yehilarotzain, then you've blown it. And what do you do? But he said, says the Mishnah Berurah, that really you got to say the proper Shabbos Shemona Esrei, but b'diavad then you are Yotze. Okay, so that's Sif Hey. Good. Sif Vov. Hataya b'tfilas Shabbos v'hechlif shel zu b'zu. So Sif Hey was talking about where you just forget it was Shabbos, and you just daven a weekday Shemona Esrei. So if you see it all the way through, then you've got to go back and you've got to daven the Shabbos Shemona Esrei. But here Sif Vov is where you mix one Shemona Esrei for another. So for example, on Friday night, instead of saying Atzah Kidashta, you say Yismach Moshe. Or on Shabbos morning, instead of saying Yismach Moshe, you say Ata Echad. So says the Mechaber, Hatoya b'tfilas Shabbos v'hechlif shel zu b'zu, ein chayzer. Then you don't have to go back. V'yesh imrim shem hechlif shel musaf ba'acheres, or acheres b'shel musaf. If you mess up with musaf and you do it wrong, chayzer, then you do have to go back. Says the Mishnah Berurah Yudalet. So if you're Torah b'tfilas Shabbos and you mess up and you say Shabbos Shachris and Mariv or Mincha or something like that, then chayzer. Then ein chayzer. Then you don't have to go back. Why not? She'ikar bracha revius hiritzei b'mnuchosenu. V'zeh nema b'chol bracha shel Shabbos, because the ikar Shabbos Shemona Esrei bracha is ritzeinu b'mnuchosenu, and you say that in all of the Shabbos Shemona Esreis. V'davka k'shesim bracha avnim nizka b'emza bracha posek. But if you're halfway through Ato Kidashta on Shabbos morning, and you're thinking, what am I doing? I'm doing a Friday night Shemona Esrei on Shabbos morning. So then if you're halfway through, you stop and you go and you start Yismach Moshe. But if you have got to the end of the Shemona Esrei and you realize I davened a Friday night Shemona Esrei on Shabbos morning, then b'di'evad you are Yotze. Now it's interesting, why is it that if you're halfway through Yismach Moshe, and let's say on Friday night you're in shul and you're halfway through Yismach Moshe or halfway through Ata Echad, when you should be doing Ata Kedashta, the Mishnah Berurah says Pesach, you got to stop. But yet we said if you're halfway through Ata Chaynein, your weekday bracha, you got to finish that bracha. So what's the difference? So in 17 he brings the Pri Megadim. And this is, it's in a way, it's obvious because we learned this yesterday. Of a tamadov shecholok din zeh, midin mish hiskal ispal b'Shabbos filas yom chol v'nizka be'emtza bracha, shedin shesorach l'sam ez bracha. Because yesterday we said that if you're halfway through a weekday bracha, you got to finish that bracha. Bir ha-Pri Megadim shekiven she'me'ik hadin hu tzorach l'spal b'Shabbos yudches brachas. Me'ik hadin, you should be davening a regular weekday Shemona Esrei on Shabbos. In Kain ha-bracha shel tfilas yom chol shayches gam tfilas Shabbos. It's not inappropriate to daven weekday brachas on Shabbos. V'lochenim hischa bracha shel chol alav l'sayim. If you're halfway through Atzachenin or Refa'in or Borei Choleinu, you should finish it off. Masha'enkin kesh mispal tefillas acher shel Shabbos she'en shayeches klal tefillah zu. Masha'enkin, if I'm davening Yismach Moshe or Atzah Echad on Friday night, it has no shayches really to this particular tefillah, and therefore I should be posik be'emtza. Okay, then we said, the Machaba said at the end, that V'yesh Oimrim, that if you mess up with Musaf, then you chayzer, then you do have to go back. So says the Mishnah Berurah in Tesvav, Ha'achreinim tomu al mashakasav b'loshen V'yesh Oimrim, Tukula al mamoidim b'zeh. In other words, this is unanimous. If you say Yismach Moshe instead of Tikanta Shabbos, the Musaf Shemona Esra, then it's not Yesh Oimrim. Everyone agrees that you go back. Musaf b'acheres, v'afilu b'acheres gamkein me'in Shabbos. And even if the thing you said is also me'in Shabbos, kagoin, Yismach Moshe v'chiyah gavna, so you said Yismach Moshe instead of Musaf, instead of Tikanta Shabbos. Kim sheniski bo me'in korban Musaf shal Shabbos. The problem is you didn't mention the korban Musaf shal Shabbos, and that's the essence of the Musaf Shemona Esra. V'chol shekenim hi tfilas acheres legamrei, and therefore the halach is the same as we said above in Sif Hey, that if you have taken 3 steps back, which we understand to mean you finished Elokainet Sir and Yehilurotzain, then Chayzer the Rosh, that is a fatal blow, and you've got to say the Musaf Shemona Esra properly. The Imleya Karaglov, Chayzer le Tikanta Shabbos, then you just go back to Tikanta Shabbos, which is the beginning of the Musaf Shemona Esra. For Kosav Achai Odom de Nizkar Echod, Achar Shesim HaBrocha Emtzois, say that if you remember before you've actually started to say, you don't have to go back to the beginning of Tikanta Shabbos, you can just be yotze by saying that. Okay. What was your mistake? You said Tikanta Shabbos for Kavanos, L'Shem Shachris. But your plan was to do this for Shachris. So, for example, on Shabbos morning, instead of saying Yismach Moshe, you say V'tikanta Shabbos. So then you got to go back. You're saying the wrong thing. You're lying. And therefore you got to go back and daven a proper Shacharis Shemona Esra. But you don't have to daven Musaf again. Why? Because you've already davened Musaf. True, you did it wrong, and you did it b'mkoim Shacharis, but lamaisa you've davened Musaf, and therefore you just need to repeat the Shacharis Shemona Esra, but you don't need to repeat the Musaf Shemona Esra. Even though you were thinking Shacharis. If, however, you remember that halfway through your Musaf Shemona Esra, which really should have been your Shacharis Shemona Esra, you remember halfway through b'chol makom she'omed afil b'emsa bracha mishal Shacharis poisek b'emsa or maskal Yismach Moshe v'ayim behalacha. Then in that situation, you remember halfway through Tikanta Shabbos, you realize, hey, what am I doing? This is Shacharis. You go back to Yismach Moshe. Okay, so just to summarize, what have we said? In Sif Hey, we've said that if you, instead of davening a Shabbos Shemona Esra, you daven a weekday Shemona Esra, that is fatal, and therefore you've got to repeat the Shemona Esra. If you have not yet finished your Shemona Esra, you have not been chayze, which the Machaba says oike ragla, which we understand to mean you finish the kind of and Yehilurotzain, then you can you haven't ended, just in the middle, and therefore you just do your Shabbos Shemona Esra. In Sif Vov, we've said that if you mess up with Shabbos, you do let's say instead of Atzah Kedash on Friday night, you do Yismach Moshe. Then, since you've mentioned Shabbos, we say Eina Chayze. However, that's only true for Shachris, Mincha, and Mariv. Atzah Kedash, in other words, but not Musaf. When it says Yeshem, it means it's L'Kula Alma. And if therefore, let's say on Shabbos morning, instead of Yismach Moshe, you daven Tikanta Shabbos, then that is a fatal error, and you need to go back and say Yismach Moshe. However, you don't need to go back and repeat the Musaf Shemona Esra because L'Maisa you've done it. Okay, good. Zion. Now we're going to discuss some very interesting halachas of Vayechulu. After the Friday night Shemona Esra, you say Vayechulu. Mishum Yontov shechol yes b'Shabbos, because of Yontov which falls on a Shabbos. She'ein omer mosei b'tefillah. Why do you say it after the davening? Because on the Yontov, where you don't say Vayechulu in davening, therefore Chazal were masakin that you say it on the Yontov which falls on a Shabbos. you do Vayechulu afterwards because you haven't said it in your Shemona Esra, and therefore across the year we say it every Friday night, even when it's not Yom Tov. That's what it comes out. And also to be motzi, you say it out loud afterwards, to be motzi someone who doesn't know how to daven Shemona Esra. And you say it in a loud voice and standing up. So it says in the Mishnah Berurah, Sif Kotin Yud Ches, She'ein Oimrim Oisoi, V'agav Shabbos Zeh Tignu L'chol HaShabbos, like I just said. So in other words, even though in essence it was instituted to say on a Yontef which falls on Shabbos, Chazal said you continue that institution of saying Vayechulu after Shemona Esra throughout the year.
Do you say on Vayechulu on Pesach?
Why not? What do you mean only when it's Shabbos?
Yeah, Shabbos Pesach. You say it?
Yeah, I think so.
We don't say go.
No, we just and then we go.
Yeah,
Yeah, I think so. I can't remember exactly, but I think so. Whatever. Yeah, I think so. Now you say Vayechulu standing up. Says the Mishnah Berurah Sif Kotin Yud Tes. Lefisha bezeh onu meidim laKadosh Baruch Hu k'maaseh bereishis.
And then after
You say Hallel.
after we say.
After Hallel you say Vayechulu.
Yeah, I've got
Before.
Halal.
Yeah?
I think so.
Yeah, can say. Okay, so lefisha bezeh onu meidim laKadosh Baruch Hu b'maaseh bereishis. So why do we stand when we say Vayechulu? Because we're giving testimony. We're giving edus that HaKadosh Baruch Hu created the world. The din edim ba'amidin halacha is that edim stand k'dichsiv va'omdu shnei ha'anoshim. V'toiv lo ma'oisa biyachad b'tzibur. It's good to say it with the tzibur. To eda shlema bo'inon leheid l'HaKadosh Baruch Hu. We want the whole community to testify to HaKadosh Baruch Hu that it's in Maaseh Bereishis. V'al kol ponim yib'shnayim. But minimally, you should have at least two people because you don't have edus less than that. V'yochid mispalel. If a person davens b'yechidus, he's davening at home for whatever reason, yesh omrim de'ein achoyze lo mevayechulu, de'ein edus liyochid, v'yesh omrim de'yochid yochel lo ma'aval ein tzorech amida. And others say, look, he can, but it's just not proper edus, therefore he doesn't need to stand.
So when it says a yochid, you mean if two?
No, one person. Oh, I see. If two people, then you're okay. A yochid means a yochid. It means if he's on his own and therefore he can't do it with another person, then there are yeshomim that he doesn't say it, and yeshomim he says it sitting down. And it's good that the yochid should say it. But he shouldn't think of edus because he can't give edus as an ed yochid on his own. But he should just be kari b'Torah. If he doesn't say it in shul for whatever reason, then he should say it b'kiddush standing up. And we know that our minhag is that anyway on Friday nights we include Vayechulu in Kiddush. If you look at 25, interesting notes here. He says, what happens if you're davening a Friday night Shemona Esra, and this is what you see quite often. You daven the Friday night Shemona Esra, and you don't manage to say Vayechulu. So people do it afterwards. We'll come to that in a minute. But let's say you sort of finish Shemona Esra a bit late, and they're halfway through Vayechulu. So is it possible are you still in? Can you still say Vayechulu a bit quickly with the tzibur who have already started? So look at this, very interesting notes in 25. HaMispal Shemona Esrei v'hischilu hatzibur lem Vayechulu kasav hagon of Shlomo Zalman Auerbach she'im nimtze be'elokai netzar v'kva oma lifnei kein yularatzon. If you've already said yularatzon, which you say the beginning of Elokai netzar, yachol lem Vayechulu matzibur. You stop, you say Vayechulu with a tzibur, because it's not, you're not going on something else. That's part of the nusach of tefillah. And you're also being mekayim the concept of edus by saying it with other people. And it's more than just saying it with two people. It's the hidur of doing it with a minyan, with a lot of people. It's not proper edus, it's just a hidur. So if you are in Elokai netzar, you can just stop where you are. You've already said Yularatzon, and you can jump onto the Vayechulu bandwagon. Now listen to the next one, also very interesting. You you wait, you listen to them, and because you listen to them and you were mechaven a little bit, and you just when you say it again afterwards by yourself, you don't have to find another person to do it. That's number one.
It's like a dovish in Kedusha, in a way.
Yeah, it's like Kedusha, you're hearing.
It's like a dovish.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hey, listen to this. Also very interesting. If you go to now where does it carry on? Yeah, if you go to the back, page 11, and can you see the bottom left quarter of the page? He says, this is what I was referring to before. Umisha herich betfila lachash v'simes tfilosa b'shasib simu lo mevayechulu b'kol hiragon hagrad baharan she'im yaschel lo mevayechulu k'toich they dibel sim hashatz. In other words, they're still saying Vayechulu, and they're heading towards the very end of Vayechulu, and you want to start. You're okay. You're still in. Why? It's as if you're saying it with them. Fascinating. So if you've got the tzibur saying Vayechulu, and they're singing it gives you another minute or so. You then finish your Shemon Esra, and they've only got a few words left of their Vayechulu. So long as you started your Vayechulu when they're still finishing off, even a word or two, you're still in. It's as if you said it with the tzibur. Useful to know. All right, let's finish off quickly. Then that's the end of Zayin. Ches. Va'omer shliach tzibur bracha achas me'en sheva. Then the shliach tzibur says Magen Avos. Ve'en hayochid omer oisa. And a yochid davening b'yechidus does not say it. If he wants to, he can, but just without the brachas at the beginning and at the end. And the minhag is the tzibur to sing with, but without saying the brachas. Says the Mishnah Achas Mein Sheva, the reason why it was instituted, because people shouldn't get injured. Their shuls were in the fields. The people came late to shul, into the fields, and therefore they're going to stay a bit later to finish off davening, and it's dangerous for them to come home. So Chazal were masakin, a bit of a prolonged davening, to say Magen Avos, that people should come back with company and not be in danger. They'll finish off their tefillah. And if you want to say it b'yechidus, you can, but just don't say the brachas at the beginning and end. Good. Because the takana was lemaisa that the chazan does it. Al kain nira poshet shemashenagim be'ezim mekomish hashich tzibur omer b'kol ram at kenish shemayim v'aretz v'ach kach omer b'lachash lo yofa hein oisin. When sometimes you see that the Bal Tefillah, when everyone sings along Magen Avos, he shouldn't just then go into Kaddish or finish off. He should actually go back and say Magen Avos properly, because that was the Ikar Takana. Tes. Yontav shechol yos b'Shabbos, eina maske shel Yontav v'bracha me'en sheva. You don't mention Magen Avos pirish brachas kel elyon. Okay. Tes eina maske ki lo tiknua ela b'Shabbos. It's a Shabbos takana. V'afilu b'Shabbos eina chayva mitzad hadin rak shetikna mishum sakana, like we just explained v'chanal. V'mad tikun ve'ein lahoisif aleha. Yud. Ein omer bracha me'en sheva b'beis chasanim v'aveilim. You don't say it there. To leka time with the ma'achrin lovish you nizik nizokin, because the whole thing was a tzibur when they're there. But if you have it like a one-off minyan with the beis chasanim or avenim, then not. Yud beis chasanim pirush shemispalim beis on minyan v'cholshkin osim shemispalim prokim minyan b'bais. Avul kashiyesh kviyas al eze yomim v'yesh sefer Torah etzlom kamo biridim doimel beis hakneses kvur v'oimrim. The leka timer of Mokum Shenogin Laimra Ein Limchis Biyodam Kain Kota Magen Avram B'Shem Arad Vazav Primogodim Mefafid Havi Sofi Brocha Levatol. Now the big question is, how kavua does the minyan have to be? Right? So say for example you have a COVID street minyan, for 3 months. Is that enough? So he says at the back in 37, 37, which goes over to page 12. 37. Yeah, he says, "Uvegeder kviyazu kosav ha'eshel Avraham she'ena mokum kviyas gomor tzorich she'kavul tefillah kama yomim b'retzifus." Only a few days b'retzifus v'gam she'yispal bo'esa yomim as kol ha'tefillas b'tzibur. So if you got a street minyan for a few days going, that's l'chayr enough. seems to be from this Eish Afram. Doesn't need
It's
to.
not about the Friday night. It's about.
Yeah, it's about the kvias of that particular
It's a
minyan.
Sefer Torah,
What?
and if it's a Sefer
Yeah,
Torah,
so yeah, and the street minyan they had Sefer Torah. No, they had Sefer Torah.
It's just a Friday night minion.
Yeah.
These happen all the time.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah, I don't know if that's kvias. I don't know. The next thing will just take 2 minutes. Let's just finish off the similars just for completion. Okay, Yud Aleph. Af b'Shabbos she'achar Yontif omrim brachim ein sheva. If Yontif was on a Thursday, Friday, for example, this year, Yontif Thursday, Friday, on the Shabbos that follows, you do say it on that Friday night. There's no Mishnah Berurah on Yud Aleph. Yud Beis ein ledaber b'shah she'omrim Vayechulu. You shouldn't speak when you're saying Vayechulu. V'lo b'shah she'omer shliach tzibur brachim ein sheva. Nor that time either. When he says Magen, Avos says the Mishnah Berurah ein ledaber b'tur b'shem sefer Chasidim. Very strong words coming up. Ma'aseh b'chosid echad she'ra lechosid. So one chassid sees another chassid who has passed away, pirish b'chalom, in a dream. Upon of Marikos, his face was drained. Amaloi lama panoch merikos. Why is your face so pale? Amaloi mipnei shayisi medaber vayechulu b'shasha hatzibur omrim b'magen avos uviyiskadl ad kan l'sheile. So one has to be very careful not to speak in those times. Yud Gimel im hispal shachol v'lo hiskes shel Shabbos ay shelo hispal klal. If a person davened chol and he didn't mention Shabbos bichlal, or he didn't daven at all, v'shom mishtech tzibur brachim ein sheva b'rish ad seif yotza. Amazing. So he didn't daven this Friday night Shemini Esrei. He hears Magen Avos and he has in mind, then he can be Yotz's Friday night tefillah. Says the Mishnah Berurah, you make Chav Zayin, v'shom mishtech tzibur mishum to tefillas Avos rishus. Mekilim ba, and therefore we makel that he can get a piggyback from Magen Avos of the Shliach Tzibur. Yotza. U'lechatchila yesh li zohe loima im ha-Shliach Tzibur. Lechatchila, he should say it with the Shliach Tzibur. Kula b'mila, sorry. Word for word. Min ha-tchila ba-brocha ad soif. Baruch ato Hashem mekadesh Shabbos. V'im kva oma Shliach Tzibur tzorich lachs v'lispal. But if he missed the boat, and the Shliach Tzibur is already gone, he's already set sail, then he's got to go back to daven again. V'lo yoima b'yochid b'ruchas me'en sheva. But as a yochid, he does not say me'en avos. Magen Avos, v'gam nochen adova she'em nizka kodim she'shom me'ashtech tzibur brochanal she'lo yismach al zeh. You shouldn't really rely on this. Rak yispal oida pam tefillah sheva kaseda ki yesh cholkan al ikad din zeh el ayin b'tur. And better to just daven the proper Shemini Esrei rather than to rely on this. Okay.